Hello, everyone. I hope you can hear me and see me and that my interconnection works today because we have a storm raging here in Beirut, and that always affects the internet connection a bit. So I hope we'll be fine. Let me know how you're doing in the comment section. Lovely to see you all or to see you all again. Thanks, Suzanne, for helping me with moderating this stuff. And yeah. Well, let me say a couple of things about stuff that will be happening on the channel soon. Well, basically, as I announced recently in a community post, next week there's going to be a big announcement that's going to come out about like a cool event happening in the near future, but I can't, it's not on me to announce this. You'll probably hear it from good, glad you hear and see me well. You're going to hear it from someone else because someone else is in charge of that event, but I'm very excited and you should be too. Then the second thing, most probably next week, Cameron Bertuzzi and I will do a live stream where we respond to Genetically Modified Skeptic's recent video. Sorry guys, where Drew responded to Greg Kokel's kind of teaching session on apologetics and atheism and all that stuff. So Cameron and I we're planning on just responding to some of the arguments that Drew made, and then we'll see how that goes. So stay tuned for that. That might be happening on Tuesday. Then what else? Well, that's about it. I thought, actually, just picking up on something about that video from Genetically Modified Skeptic, what was funny is that, around a month ago, I posted a YouTube short, where I dealt with the argument. One of those shorts, I don't know if you've seen them, where I kind of make this role play between a skeptic and the Christian. And I basically went through the argument that I've heard, I don't know how many times, like dozens of times, countless times from atheists or skeptics when it comes to morality, which is that, people would say that, our sense of morality is just the result of evolution. That's something that evolution has instilled in us. And that's why it cannot be, there's nothing objective about that. And then what was funny is that so basically, and this argument commits the genetic fallacy. It basically says, well, it's because we've come to know something through a certain way, that's why it cannot be objective, or that's why it cannot be true. You could say that, well, actually, for the sake of argument, and I mentioned that in the video, for the sake of argument, I could say, well, yes, sure, morality, our sense of morality came about through evolution. I could, give that to the skeptic. You could actually say that God, I don't go there, but for the sake of argument, I grant that. You could say that God used the process of evolution to, for our moral sense to develop. But that in itself does not yet say anything about the objectivity or subjectivity of morality. So now, okay, I did that short around a month ago, and then I had a lot of people saying, well, that's a straw man. I've never heard anyone make that argument. That's like, well, Luke is just, engaging with his imagined skeptic. Again, no one would ever say such a thing. And then, I watched Drew's video where he makes this exact argument, okay? He says, well, morality is just a thing that came through evolution. That I don't believe in objective morality. There's nothing to that. So I thought that was fun. Yeah. I actually thought I want to let you know about stuff that's happening here in Beirut. In the ministry that I lead, we're actually planning on opening a cafe, an event cafe. We've been building offline. We've been building a community of just skeptics and seekers and believers coming together, reading the Bible together, having discussions together, having fun together, movie nights and whatnot. Every Thursday night we have a Bible study in a cafe, which is attended usually by some 10 to 20 people, always depends a bit on the season. And there's just a real sense of community there, some just people really sharing friendship and sharing life together, even though they come from different backgrounds. And we're just about to open like an event cafe where we kind of want to scale up things and reach more people and kind of consolidate everything that has been happening, sometimes in cafes, sometimes in people's houses. I mean, we've hosted people in our living room countless times, and sometimes there would just not be enough space to host. I mean, sometimes 30 people coming for discussion events or for even prayer gatherings and that sort of stuff. Okay, let me take up some of the questions. Actually, I really liked a question that was posed on the post by Vinny Gigidi. What is your best argument for free will? I think that's a great question. I mean, I hope you guys have seen my 2 videos where I respond to rationality rules, to the video he has done, in which he claims that neuroscience has debunked free will, which is fairly popular argument. People saying, well, neuroscience has shown that we make our decisions, or our brain makes our decisions for us before we become aware that we've actually made the decision, and that's why free will doesn't exist. That's a very, very popular argument, and and rationality rules has used it to claim that the free will has conclusively been debunked. And I responded to him in 2 videos and shown that I think I've shown that neuroscience really hasn't shown that at all. Now, what's my best argument for free will? I think, well, ultimately, both those who argue against free will and those who argue for free will ultimately have to appeal to, to intuition. It's, there are good, I mean, you can say there are good philosophical arguments for against free will, and there are good arguments for free will. But ultimately, I think, there are 2 things which I think are key and which are ultimately decisive on this matter, at least for me. One is that it really feels as we go through life that we do have free will. As you take your experience of the world as raw as it is, when you get up in the morning, you feel like, I decide whether I want to hop onto that live stream or not, or I decide whether I want to have a chicken burger or a hamburger for lunch. That's just how it feels, to us. And so I think that for a good start. I think that gives like a head start or for the beginning, that gives a head start for free will. Now, of course, the determinist will say, this is just an illusion, but we may well feel like we take that free decision, but it's just an illusion. However, I mean, if you're going to make the argument from illusion, then you would have to offer some decisive evidence why that is an illusion. And sometimes people say, our experience of the physical world, is, let's say this phone, it's a solid item. And yet when you look at it at the atomic or molecular, atomic and quantum level, you'll find that, between electrons and protons, there is the 90% empty space. All solid matter is actually on the atomic level ultimately is made up of 90% empty space, and that's why there is an illusion there. We perceive it as solid, but it isn't actually solid. There's more space than matter, so to speak, to that thing. Fair enough. However, here is a case where we have decisive evidence against what our perception tells us, and that's why we have good reason to be more nuanced about our perception of solid items. However, when it comes to free will, what is the decisive evidence that our experience of free will is actually illusory? I mean, just claiming that it is an illusion, doesn't suffice to actually, show that our experience is an illusion. It's just, at this stage, it's just a claim. That's one thing. I think ultimately when it comes to how we experience reality, free will is better off as an explanation of you know, or as the answer to whether there is free will or not, because we do experience the world like that. And then the second thing, and this might actually be more important, or the better argument for free will is tethered, I think, or linked to morality. You know, it's, and one philosopher, Alfred Mele, who has said that, it's how the way you define free will, or the way you go about thinking about free will, must be linked, or is plausibly should be linked to morality. Why is this so? I mean, for you to have moral responsibility or moral accountability, you need to have free will. It doesn't make sense for you to be held accountable to stuff that you had no choice over. You know, if you're going to be imprisoned, or, you know, judged or fined for things you couldn't choose otherwise, well, what's the fairness? And, you know, skeptics would often you know, bring that up. I mean, especially in response to Calvinists, and I think it's a valid argument. Well, if God has predetermined everything, well, how could He hold us accountable and judge us, given that we couldn't have chosen otherwise? How is that fair? And I think that's a legit argument that needs to be taken seriously. So in the same way, if you're determined, physically determined, or however you're determined, well, it doesn't make sense to be held morally accountable. Morality kind of goes down the drains. And so that's why I think the way you think about free will is linked to the way you think about morality. If you believe that morality, or that you really have moral accountability, and that morality is, and regardless of whether, you know, whether it's objective or subjective, but as long as you believe as a person that people should be held accountable for stuff, for what they do, well, then you have to believe that they have some measure of free will. Otherwise, you're going to be, your worldview is going to be in internal conflict. Okay, and so I think that might actually be the even more powerful argument for free will, because as I see it, even, you know, the most skeptical person, even the person who denies objective morality, they will also feel as a real life experience, as just the raw way in which they look into the world, that people should be held morally accountable for the stuff they do. You know, if you're going to rob a person, if you're going to kill a person, rape a person, or whatever, if you're going to commit genocide, well, you should be held accountable for that. Most people think that way, but again, you can only plausibly say that if you assume that the person who's going to be held accountable has actually free will, because it would not make sense at all to hold anyone accountable for stuff they couldn't have done otherwise. So these are my 2 cents on the free will stuff. So now I'm just trying to go through the comments to see if I have good questions. Suzanne, if you have a good one, you can pick it up for me. Cody Gillard. Yes, no worries. I mean, about the last time you talked about that argument, that's fine. I mean, it's also a matter of me just trying to, keep this conversation engaged. And sometimes I think the questions are a bit beyond the scope of a simple live stream. Do I believe? Okay, wait. Stock raising. Hi. How do you go about biblical corruption? Well, I hope I understand the question properly. If you're talking about the transmission of texts and the veracity or reliability of text, I think there are very good arguments that the biblical accounts we have are very close, if not congruent, to what was written originally. I mean, one of the things there are 2 things here. One is the question that there are 2 issues at play here. One is the question of whether what was written down originally by, let's say, Mark, Luke, Matthew, or John was actually was this accurate? Were these guys eyewitnesses? That's one part of the question when it comes to biblical reliability, or, well, honing in on the New Testament at this stage anyway. That's one thing. What was written down originally, was that accurate? Was this eyewitness testimony? That's one thing. And the second thing is, well, was what was then transmitted and copied and passed on down the ages and decades and through generations and centuries, was the copying process or transmission process, was that reliable? And so these are really the two issues at play here when it comes to how reliable the scriptures are. And I think, as again, this is a big topic, I guess, to speak about on a live stream. But as far as the first issue is concerned, whether the Luke, Matthew, and the guys who wrote things down were actually eyewitnesses, I think there are very good arguments for that. And I'm just going to pick one, again, for the sake of brevity. Richard Bonhoeffer has done like a study of this, and it basically, so one of the arguments to consider is that if, in the Gospels or in the New Testament, you get around 30 locations, just 30 cities or towns mentioned accurately, with geographical locations, surroundings, topography, and all of that stuff. Now, imagine if a person who wasn't an eyewitness or living in Palestine at that time would write down an account. Would they be able to, accurately describe the location and the surroundings of 30 towns? I mean, if I think of, let's pick Thailand. I know the capital, I think, it's Bangkok, but other than that, I couldn't name, off the top of my head, I couldn't name any other city in that country. Vietnam, Phnom Penh as the capital, that's about it. I know about where it's located, more or less, but that's about it. Whereas, because I've never been there, so I couldn't give eyewitness testimony of anything that happened in Thailand or Vietnam. Whereas, again, the gospel writers, they name accurately 30 locations, again, geographical location and everything. Same applies to customs. They accurately describe all sorts of customs that we know were practiced at the time, both Jewish customs, Roman customs, procedures, political procedures, or administrative procedures, and all of that stuff. Again, I would not be able to describe any of this stuff in a country I've never been to. So that's why I think, as far as the eyewitness issue is concerned, we have good reasons to believe that the guys who wrote the Gospels, they were actually there. They were familiar with the context and the times they were living in. Then, so the second thing, as far as transmission is concerned, this is an issue that is fairly often talked about. We have manuscripts for the New Testament, like countless manuscripts. In fact, there's about, just in Greek, which is the language in which the New Testament was written, there are around 5,800 manuscripts, and so this gives us a good ground to stand on to actually reconstruct the original text. Okay, I guess many of you have heard this. We don't have the autographs of any document from ancient times. Autograph being the original document that was written. So what Mark penned when he wrote down the Gospel of Mark. For no document coming from ancient times is the autograph available, and that applies not just to the New Testament. It applies to Plato, Aristotle, to Roman history and whatnot. The autograph is not available. All that we have in every case of ancient history is manuscripts. That is copies of the autograph. What people again copied when they had the autograph in front of them. And so what you do in reconstructing the original text is you basically combine and compare all the manuscripts, all the copies you have available. And the thing is that the more copies you have available, the more the more copies you have to compare, the more accurately can you reconstruct the original text. And in this regard, the New Testament is better off than any document from ancient history because it has far more manuscripts available than any other document. I mean, we don't need to go into the specifics here, but that's how I would go about answering the question of the corruption of Scripture. Okay. What else? Okay, Tam, Chris, hi there, appreciate your minutes. Yeah, credentials, that sounds lofty. I mean, I've done, so a bit about my educational background. I was trained in landscape design first, and I studied theology. I mean, my undergrad degree is in biblical and intercultural studies. I did that in the UK. At the university in the UK, and I've completed a master's in Christian apologetics at Biola in Los Angeles in the US. So that's as far as my educational background is concerned. What do I think about Inspiring Philosophy's channel? Well, I think Michael Jones has been very inspiring to me personally. In fact, we've actually collaborated on 2 videos, although that's not kind of come out to the public because it's all happened at the back end. Last year I did the animation for 2 of his biblical contradiction videos. I think he mentioned it in the video description. One is on one was on the women's, the issue of the women going to the tomb on the resurrection day, and the other one was whether there were angels or men at the tomb, whether there is contradiction there because some of the gospel accounts mention men, some of the accounts mention angel, and he's done in his series on biblical contradictions or supposed contradictions in the Bible. I've worked with him, helping him to animate 2 videos there. Would I consider doing a series on the resurrection of Jesus? I've done one video in which I just pick up one argument for the historicity of the resurrection, which is, well, what we've just talked about actually, the fact that women were put down as the first eyewitnesses. You can check it out on my channel. It's called, I tried something there in the way I phrased the argument. It's called the Coke case for the resurrection, I think. The thumbnail has like a glass of Coke. So that's the one I've done. I'm not sure. I mean, I would like to do a bunch of videos on, again, reliability of the Bible, the New Testament and the Old Testament, and a bit of stuff on the resurrection. I have that at the back of my head, but I have a lot of ideas for new videos at the back of my head. So it's just, this stuff is in the pipeline, and I go about it, step by step. What else do I have here? Let me just see. Question from Olaoluwa Oyenuga. I'm sorry, this is probably pronounced horribly. How do you process comments from that my videos post are laughably fallacious? Yeah, I mean, handling comments is, that's been a bit of a learning curve. Basically, the principle according to which I operate is when people are seriously, or to put it another way, people who are just, coming with attacks and ad hominems and being disrespectful, I just ignore them. I feel there is no point. From experience, I feel like there is no point in engaging there, especially given that there are enough people who are serious in their engagement with the material. And I once made a community post about it. I can't even keep up with engaging with people who are serious, who offer serious comment and feedback. And so as long as this is the case, there is no point in me, dealing with people who are just, again, aggressive, don't actually offer arguments and just go about the whole thing with ad hominems. Yeah, so that's an answer to that. What else? How should we, Gadiel Arellano, how should we understand the spiritual realm if Jesus said that it's real and that there's an evil one lurking, because in most Western countries they laugh at the idea of spiritual beings? Yeah, that's a tough one. I mean, some people would say that for the evil one, or for Satan, for the best strategy for him to engage with people in a place where they don't believe in him, or where they don't believe in the spiritual realm, or in spirits or demons. The best strategy for him to deal with such a society or such a culture is actually to remain hidden and to not reveal himself, because then people would keep believing that he is not real, or that would reinforce their belief that he is not real. And so that seems fairly plausible to me. If if you put yourself in Satan's shoes, yes, it does make sense. If you're real, but people don't believe in you and don't believe in the spiritual realm in general, well, the best way for you to keep them in that false belief is to not show yourself to them, or not to interfere with their lives, that they would, in order for them to have reasons that you actually exist. So yeah, I guess the way I would go about it in general is that I wouldn't try and convince someone, or I wouldn't make it a priority to try and convince someone that there is a spiritual realm, or that evil exists, but I would rather focus on trying to convince them that God exists, and that the Bible reveals who he is, and that it reveals us the truth about reality. And then from there, you could, once a person gets there, they will come to face with the claims of the Bible that there is a spiritual realm and an evil one. So yeah, that's a short answer to that. Have I ever, guys? Just for practicality's sake, I'm just gonna go always with the last comment that pops up on my feed. So if you've posted a comment or a question at the very beginning of the stream, and I've just skipped or not considered it, then just feel free. I'm sorry. Just feel free to post again. Otherwise, because I'm just going to be scrolling all the time. I hope that's fine. Michelle Marie, have you ever read Letters and Papers from Prison by Dietrich Bonhoeffer? No, I've read 2 books by Dietrich Bonhoeffer. In German. They were originally written in German, and since I can read German, I read them in German. I've read Nachfolge, which is probably discipleship in in English, and then I've read I've read parts of the other book on, I can't even remember the title, but something about community and living together. I can't remember, living together. So I've read these 2, I've definitely read Nachfolge. Hello from Russia. I'm interested in Christianity, but I don't know how to get from reading the Bible and watching related YouTube. Where do I go from here? Oh wow, that's awesome. Hello to Russia. I'm sorry I can't read Cyrillic. I think a very good next step would be for you to actually meet someone in real life who can walk you through and answer your questions about Christianity, or who can even read the Bible with you. In fact, I have friends in Russia, so if you want, shoot me an email to this address, and I can actually link you to people in Russia, I think that would probably be the best step for you. It's good. That's really cool that you're interested, and keep on searching. Yes, just keep on reading the Bible, and I think it's going to be really helpful if you surround yourself with people you trust, or people you can come to trust, and who offer their time to hang out with you and discuss these questions. So again, feel free to if you shoot me an email, I will do my best to link you with people in Russia because I have a bunch of friends there. Pineapple on pizza. Yeah. I used to like pineapple on pizza actually, but not anymore. And maybe, I've been thinking about this just recently actually. Maybe that's because since I started hanging out on all these debate groups and apologetics groups, which I guess are, they seem to be dominated by people who don't like pineapple on pizza. And so since I've seen all these memes and comments and people making fun, I guess I've been maybe subconsciously influenced or affected by that. So I don't like pineapple on pizza anymore, but I used to. What are the major flaws of Platonism? Well, I have to be honest here. I don't have that big of a problem with Platonism, in the sense that, the question is, do you locate the Platonic entities? Do you locate the abstract? Do you locate them in God's mind, or do you locate them outside of God's mind? And that's something I haven't figured out yet. I've just recently seen a video by Parker's Pensées, which is, by the way, a great channel to check out. He digs deep into philosophical issues, and he's discussed that recently with Joe Schmidt, and I have it on my watch list. I want to watch it. So that's, when it comes to Platonism, that's my key issue. I still need to figure out where do you locate the entities Plato talks about. Carrot and pizza. Okay, great. Well, maybe on one live stream we should all share our preferences for pizza. Whoever made the cover photo for your YouTube channel knows their stuff. Yeah, I actually have a friend of mine who's a designer. He does all the thumbnails for me. So what I've done, I have like a folder where I've once just taken a bunch of pictures, and now we work with these to create our thumbnails. And again, I'm blessed to have a friend who just puts this together, because I wouldn't be able to do that. Question, do you believe that as long as someone is sincere in searching for truth, though or wrong, can be saved in another religion but not through it? Yeah, that's a very tricky question. I've actually, it's a very good question. And I've actually dealt with this question in my interview with William Lane Craig. I've one video on my channel where I interview William Lane Craig on the question of, does Jesus only save? And we talked about this issue of whether people can be saved in other religions. Now, I think first off, it's very important to realize that it's not the religion of Christianity that saves. That is sometimes like a misunderstanding that lurks underneath the question. It's as if the Christian religion saves, and if you're in another religion, well, can you be saved still? Now, it's not the religion of Christianity that saves, but it's Jesus Christ who saves, okay? And I mean, that's not to say, I'm not a person who says, well, Christianity is not a religion, but it's a personal relationship with Jesus. I think that's too simplistic it's sometimes a popular way of phrasing things in evangelical circles, but I think it's not that helpful. I mean, religion is a legit term to describe Christianity as a body of teachings, as a community of people who, revolve around like central dogmas or central beliefs which they hold. That's one of the ways in which religion can be described. And in this sense, Christianity is, Christianity, as the term Christianity, is a religion. Now, of course, Christianity does teach that God offers us a personal relationship with Him through Jesus Christ, but that doesn't make Christianity itself a personal relationship or personal relationship only, and it doesn't by itself, or this fact doesn't by itself, devalue or like delegitimize the use of Christianity as a religion. Okay, so that's the first thing. It's not Christianity that saves, but it's Jesus Christ who saves. And so in this sense, someone may actually be part of the Christian religion, but not be saved because they don't actually, they haven't actually been reconciled with God through Christ, but may just be part of the, the religion, again, the community, or just going through the motions and stuff. Now, I believe, I guess someone once used the term that they're a hopeful, well, no, I can't actually remember the term. Well, the way I think about it is this. It is the work of Christ that saves, okay, as I just said. Now, the question becomes, well, do people need to have conscious knowledge of the person of Jesus of Nazareth in order to be saved? And now the biggest argument that is usually put forward for those who say that you don't need to know Christ personally in order to be saved is our Old Testament saints. People would often say that, well, Moses, Abraham, or David, Isaiah, and all of these, or at least some of the Old Testament people in the Old Testament, they didn't have conscious knowledge of Christ. You may say, well, some of them had prophetic knowledge of the Messiah figure, and this is certainly the case. They had prophetic foresight of a Savior coming. But most people in the Old Testament, or most people who feature in the Old Testament, they didn't have, for purely historical reasons, they didn't know Jesus. And yet, the New Testament testifies, about a whole range of Old Testament figures who are considered righteous and who are considered part of the kingdom of God. And so, going from there, people would say that, well, maybe even today, people may not have conscious knowledge of Christ, but they have a sense through general revelation, what you read about in Psalm 19, that God reveals himself, again, what is called general revelation, through the natural order, even through conscience, what Romans 1 talks about, the kind of revelation that is available to everyone, apart from Scripture, what is called special revelation. People would say, and William Lane Craig says that in his interview, in the interview I've done with him, that general revelation may lead a person to have an awareness of their need of God's grace and of their need for salvation, or of their need even of a Savior. And he says, well, if this is all that a person has available, again, purely because they've never been given a Bible, they've never met the person who is a believer, well, God, he could well imagine that God would, bring them into his kingdom. And I think I side with that. I hope. I surely believe. I truly believe. And William Lane Craig and I, we discussed that. You want people to come to know Christ because he is the one who brings, the fullness of life, and who truly, sets you free from your guilt and from your shame, and who is, through the Holy Spirit will make you into a new creation. So you really want people to come to know Christ. But again, in some cases, and this applies in certain circumstances today, there are people who may simply not have the opportunity to actually hear about Christ. And yet, if they have, if they respond to God's general revelation, as I mentioned, if they respond positively and with not necessarily sincerity, but with humility, and with the desire to respond to God, God may kind of count that enough for them to be brought in. Okay, I hope this helps. I know this can be a bit of a controversial issue sometimes, but yeah, that's where I stand. Is there free will in heaven? Yes. Oh, okay. That's a nice question too. Jamie, you are. Is there free will in heaven? Yes, I believe there is free will in heaven. Of course, people then would sometimes move on to say, well, how can you guarantee, or how could God possibly guarantee that there won't be any sin anymore, given that there is free will? I think what's, an analogy that J.P. Moreland, a Christian philosopher, has once offered is the following, and I think it's really funny, but it's really accurate actually. It's, you would, if you were dining, at the most, delicious banquet with friends and whatnot, you'd have a really good time hanging out with people around the dining table. Again, best foods, best wine, or whatever you think of, music, and just everything is perfect and beautiful. It would never come to your mind to leave the banquet, go outside and feed on a pile of dog poop. That's what J.P. Moreland says. And so he uses this as an explanation for why, even with free will in heaven, people will not sin. In the following sense, that heaven is, the experience of God's immediate presence and all that comes with it, all goodness, all beauty, and all excitement, and all this fullness of joy. That's like an experience the way you've never had it before. Now, of course, we do experience beauty and joy and love and all of these things in this life, but they're always, you could say they're always tainted, in that, given that this world is not perfect, and given that, again, human beings are not perfect. But in heaven, you will be perfected, and then you will be brought into the presence of the perfect God, where there is perfect beauty and perfect joy. And so if it is the case that even in this world, when you have experiences of beauty and joy, it would never come to your mind in those moments to do something stupid or to do something dumb or evil, well, how much more will it never enter your mind in heaven to do something dumb or stupid, given that you're in the presence of, again, the source of all joy and love and beauty. Or another, a very similar analogy, I don't know if C.S. Lewis used that, or Paul Copan. It's when you look at kids, when they get excited about something, they will be, they're completely consumed. My son, for example, he loves doing, he builds all sorts of stuff in his room. He brings cardboard, and he brings old, he recycles material to build ships or cars or weapons or whatever. And he'll be just at peace and completely just happy by himself for 3 hours, 4 hours on a Saturday morning doing this sort of stuff. And once this happens, once he's kind of got into this, it would never enter his mind to do something dumb or to do something stupid, because he's just consumed by the very cool thing he's doing. And so in the same way, we can have free will in heaven, but given that we will be consumed with all the joy and all the beauty that surrounds us and that we get to experience, it will not enter our mind to choose to do something stupid. So yeah, that's how I would answer this question. Why God don't show where are missing persons? Why does God not show to people where are missing persons? Lord Ozunu. That would not destroy free will, but families of missing persons would know what happened to their loved ones. I don't know if I understand the question correctly. Do you mean that maybe, how does God not show where people are at, in their afterlife or after they die? Yeah, I guess the question is whether this would make your, and maybe that's a very personal question, whether this would make your pain or your struggle any more light or any easier. I guess losing a person who is close to you is a tough experience, and I guess I wonder whether it makes, whether it would ease the pain for you personally, experience that gap of not having the relationship with the person you loved, or you were able to love since they were still around. Yeah, I don't know how much that actually helps to ease that pain. But again, I might be understanding the question the wrong way. Michelle Marie, Lucas, do you agree with the polemics of David Wood against... okay, on Earth? Well, okay, so if I didn't understand the question correctly, if you miss a person on Earth, well, I mean, I guess that's part of the bigger problem of evil. You know, why do evil things happen? Why do we, why do people go missing? Just yesterday in Beirut, apparently there was a kid was kidnapped from a supermarket or something. Why does that happen? Well, again, I guess this exceeds the scope of this live stream, but ultimately, and maybe we should do a live stream once on the problem of evil only. God, allows these things to happen, or given that He, has given us free will, bad things happen. And that's how I would explain. I mean, very, very briefly. I believe, however, that, God has, identifies with us in our pain, and the way He shows that is that He came Himself as a human, like taking on human form in Jesus Christ, experiencing the pain of death. So in this sense, I think that's the most powerful thing everyone needs to know when it comes to, why does God allow evil? I mean, again, it's a philosophical question. It's also an existential question, and it's a serious question, a very serious question. And I think the most important thing to be aware of when it comes to this question, and especially when it comes to the personal aspect of it, of when you yourself experience pain, is the knowledge that God Himself, the ultimate being, the creator of all things, the one who loves us, He has, descended into the depths of pain and suffering Himself, and He knows what it feels like to be in pain, or to, just all sorts of pain that a human being can experience. And I think this is so powerful, because what people need in times of suffering and pain is not necessarily explanations, information about why bad things happen, but they really need, or why a bad thing did happen, but they really need empathy. They really need community and fellowship with people who can tell them, well, I actually know how it feels, or at least I try to understand how you feel. And that's what God offers in Christ, because Christ died on the cross. And that's why Hebrews 4 says that we have a high priest who is able to feel with us, because he's gone through the stuff that we've gone through. Cool. Now, I wanted to pick up Michelle Marie. Do you agree with the polemics of David Wood against Islam? Well, this is a good question. I know, first off, David Wood, his ministry leads countless people to Christ. There is no doubt about that. And he has videos where he just goes through comments. I've seen one video where he just goes through comments of people telling him, hey David, I used to be a Muslim. I came to Christ because of your ministry. All sorts of wild stories from all over the world where people actually end up meeting Christ because they've been set on a path, or kind of they've continued their path with David Wood or with his material. And so in this sense, I think there is real fruit coming from his ministry. There is no doubt about that. I personally would not feel comfortable with his style, but I know that he has thought through why he is doing what he's doing. It's not that he's just being, mean or a jerk, or, just going out there attacking because he has fun doing it. He has thought through why he is doing it the way he's doing. And he's also saying, I've heard him say that he isn't like that in real life conversations outside of YouTube. He, in a certain sense, if I understand him correctly, he's taking on a specific persona for the YouTube environment in order to just engage people more effectively, or that's what he hopes to be doing. And so, and he's explicitly said, well, guys, don't do what I do when you meet people. Now, the question here is, well, is this, isn't there like an issue with integrity of him being, doing one thing on the platform and another thing outside the platform? And for me personally, I would not, I think it would be an issue of integrity. I couldn't do that. And in fact, I've actually started off my YouTube channel. If you've seen my first 2 or 3 videos, they were very, like a bit aggressive actually. And I had to repent and change, because I actually felt when I started off 1.5 years ago, I felt, yes, let's go a bit aggressive, let's go a bit edgy, again, just for the sake of doing YouTube. Whereas in normal life or in real life, I was never like that. And so, but I thought, well, that's the way to go about it on this YouTube thing. And then I realized after 2 or 3 videos, I realized, man, this is so dumb. I shouldn't do that. Why shouldn't I, being controversial and edgy and aggressive, I just didn't feel comfortable with it. And again, I never did that. And I never acted this way in real life. Again, I would have, in our living room, we would have people from all sorts of backgrounds coming for discussion and for, dialogue and all of this stuff. And again, what people really enjoyed is the atmosphere of friendship, the atmosphere which allowed people to connect in a safe environment, to talk about deep issues, to form friendships, even though they, have different convictions. And so I've, at some point, like fairly quickly, like 1 month into my YouTube journey, I realized, well, this is really dumb, me being all this aggressive and whatnot on YouTube, whereas I actually don't do that. And so that's why I changed tone. I'm saying this because David Wood, he doesn't do that. He is edgy, he is aggressive. And apparently for him, it's okay, or he feels at ease with saying, well, I go punchy on the platform, even though I'm not like that outside the platform. Now, for me personally, I don't feel comfortable with that. So I couldn't do that. And in this sense, I guess that is a bit of a critique of David Wood. But I want to say that I've never talked to him about it. And he would probably have his reasons to say that, well, it is fine to do what I do. I can reconcile that, or I can, with a good conscience, do what I do. Like one thing on YouTube and another thing outside of YouTube. So that's my response. And the other thing, just from a personal perspective, I wouldn't be able, because we live in the Middle East, I couldn't do what he does, especially if I were to respond to Islam or Muslims, which which my channel doesn't really do. I couldn't do that here. That would just not be healthy, or it would actually become a safety issue for me, given where I live. So, and again, it's not my type anyway. Okay, what else? Well, actually, one thing I need to mention here, guys. I'm sorry. Responding to the question about David Wood, I guess what. Again, I don't want to kind of relativize what I just said, but one thing that I think Westerners, or maybe Western Christians who criticize David Wood, don't understand is that in Eastern culture, or in Middle Eastern culture, and here in Beirut, I know quite a few people who know David Wood. I know Muslims who watch his videos and they're affected by him. I know people who come from a pious Muslim background who know David Wood, and they're disturbed by him, but they're stirred up, and I felt in a good way. I've heard pious Muslims saying, well, this guy, David Wood, he's just a joke and stuff. But I could tell, well, they're actually, they're actually challenged by what he does and by his arguments. So that's cool, and I thought that was nice to see. And so here's something that I guess Western critics or Western evangelical critics of David Wood don't realize, is that in Eastern culture, being strong in the way you deliver your arguments, like having strong and aggressive rhetoric, is actually, that's valued as something positive. it's. I mean, I've participated in a debate here in Beirut with an atheist, and one of the feedbacks I got is that I wasn't strong enough in my rhetoric. I should have been more aggressive. Whereas I got at it in the sense of, well, you show humility, you go easy on the person, you're kind and everything, and just deliver your arguments. Objectively, but show kindness. And some people, they got back to me saying, well, this, of course, kindness is a good thing. But if you're too soft, people will perceive that as weakness, and actually as weakness of your position. And so this is something to be aware of. And I guess David Wood might actually be aware of this himself, which I don't know, but it might be part of the reason why that pushed him to go the way, to go about things the way he does, is the awareness that, again, in Eastern culture specifically, strength in rhetoric and aggressiveness in rhetoric is perceived as a positive thing. And actually being too soft or too nice is perceived as you not being actually convinced, or you not having good arguments. Even if your arguments themselves, even if the content, even if the message is good, well, if the way you deliver the message doesn't come with a certain strength and energy, you will be perceived as having like a weak position to defend. So yeah, that's just that. Dutch and German is the same thing. No, I think Dutch, I mean, I understand some of the words that Dutch people speak, and I think the Dutch, they understand some German words, but it's not exactly the same thing. Do you think God is happy or mad with you? I think God is happy with me. I mean, happy is a very fluffy and kind of flexible term, but in general, I think God loves people. God loves His children. So in this, and God, looks at the follower of Christ through Christ when He sees, we as followers of Jesus have been, clothed with Christ's righteousness and have been made holy. So I think God looks with favor and, if you want, happily on His people. Yes, Louis Schenker. David Wood has done an interview with Cameron Bertuzzi from Capturing Christianity, where they talk about David Wood's approach. What else? Christian theologians found spiritual truths in other religions' holy books. Is it okay to believe those truths? Is it okay to believe those truths? As long as we put the Bible as ultimate authority. Is it okay to believe truths in other religions as long as we put the Bible as ultimate authority? Yes, I guess, the way I would see this is that all truth is God's truth, Whatever is true because God is the source of truth. And so definitely, I believe you can find truths with a small letter T in not just other religions, but in culture in general. I think this is part of what it means to be created in God's image, is that we have, God's fingerprint on our lives, or we reflect to a certain extent, we reflect God's character. And this, we do so in a flawed way because of the fall, but it's like every human being, whether they believe in God or not, by virtue of being a human being and by virtue of being created in the image of God, somehow reflects something of God's character. And so you can extrapolate that to the level of society and culture, in that every culture, because it, culture being the way that human beings express themselves and relate with one another and relate with the world, every culture will have things that reflect God's character. It will also have things that opposes God's character, which is why we need redemption and why we need transformation, and why this applies to whole cultures as well. Cultures need to be transformed into just conformity with Christ. But so there are truths to be found, even in, you could say in business studies or in, I don't know. I mean, there's truth to be found in science, and there is truth to be found, in other religious books, in the sense that I don't want to get misunderstood here. It's not I don't believe that all religions are the same and all religions lead to God. No, not at all. But if, Islam says that God is just, if you find that statement in in a book of Islamic theology, well, yes, I agree. God, well, maybe, I guess we probably disagree on who he is, but the God ultimately, the God who exists, yes, he is just. Or God is the creator. Yes, that's definitely true. So whoever, says that God is the creator expresses truth. Now again, obviously you want to flesh out the details about, okay, what do you mean by God? And, so in case, okay, in case I'm back, I don't know if this is going to be on it, but I'll see. Let me just finish the train of thought I was on. No, I didn't get blown up by the jihadis, but here I am again. Well, okay, so there is, this is fun. So I'm back because, well, the electricity and the Wi-Fi just cut out. I thought this is going to be over, but now I just was able to resume. Let me finish the train of thought. So I'm not saying that all religions lead to God, not at all. I mean, definitely not. But I am saying that there is truth to be found out there in culture, and there is truth to be found even, like, again, truth, not ultimate truth, but pointers to truth, or again, truth with a small letter T in other religions, whenever, or, any religion that claims that, there exists a universe out there and, God created the universe. Well, yes, I mean, that's something that the Bible tells us. So that's about it. I'm sorry, guys, that this happened. All right, am I German? No, I'm not German. I'm Swiss. So I'm originally Swiss. I've lived in Lebanon, in Beirut for the past 10 years. And so yeah, but I'm Swiss, hence my accent. Okay. Yeah, so let me see what else to pick up here. No, got hit by the storm and the jihadis, no. The Thinking Dutchman, my pastor does, good to see you, Carol. My pastor does not believe God is omniscient because he thinks this is incompatible with free will. I think, well, I don't know if your pastor is an open theist because, open theists, and one of the most prominent proponents of open theism is Greg Boyd, whom I've read several books by him. He's got really good stuff. But however, I'm not an open theist. I don't believe in his case for open theism. And basically, what he would say, again, and what proponents of open theism would generally say, that if God knows everything, there is no space for free will. In fact, it's not open theists only who say that, but it's an argument kind of regularly made by skeptics who say that, well, if God knows everything, well, I'm bound to do what God knows that I'm going to do. To cut the long story short, I'll have a YouTube short coming out on this topic. Later down the road, it's already prepared, but it's not yet shot. The simple answer to that is that knowledge has no causal powers. The fact that anyone knows or someone knows something does not cause the thing they know. So let me give you an example. I know that on the 4th of July, Americans will celebrate Independence Day. That's 4th of July, right? Yes. So I know that on the 4th of July, all over the US, you will have fireworks and celebrations of the Day of Independence. Now, does my knowledge of that cause any of those fireworks to go off? Or does this cause Americans to celebrate Independence Day? No. It's just that. Knowledge is just that. It's my knowledge. And so in the same way, God can know things, and he can omnisciently know them. That is, he perfectly knows them. But his knowledge is just that. It's knowing what people who are given free will do. And so there is no internal conflict between proposing that God has created human beings with real free agency and saying that he knows everything. It's God knows everything that's going to happen within the framework that he has created, and that framework includes free agents who have proper free will. So there is really no contradiction, and to me this seems fairly, I mean, it's very easy to kind of again understand that knowledge has no causal powers. I don't know why it should have. And thus, there is no contradiction in proposing that God has perfect knowledge of all things, past and future, and that we have free will. These things go perfectly together, I think. I mean, there's a couple of books on that. I know that Paul Copan deals with this issue in what Paul Copan has 2 short books. They're actually good to put on your reading list. 2 books. One is called. I mean, he has several books, but 2 of the books I'm thinking of are That's Just Your Interpretation and True for You but Not for Me. These are 2 books in which he goes through just regular like objections to Christianity, like in a chapter by chapter summarized sort of fashion. And one of the things he tackles, I think in 2 chapters maybe, is again the question of free will and God's omniscience. And then William Lane Craig has a more elaborate book on this whole topic. I think it's the God Who Is Wise, or I can't remember where he tackles this issue. Good. What do I think about Ray Comfort's video? Have you seen them? Yes, I've seen a bunch of stuff of Ray Comfort. I think he's inspiring what he does. He's very bold. He's very upfront. I'm not so. And I've heard people say that his approach, which is basically showing people that they're sinners, like facing people with their with the fact that they're sinners. That's the way to go about it. I do think that you have to, in order for people to grasp the gospel. I mean, definitely, if you want to understand what Christianity is about, part of it is understanding the predicament of human beings that it, announces or proclaims, which is that we are sinners who need saving. You cannot get the gospel across. You cannot get the message of salvation across without getting across the message that people are, sinners who need saving. And Ray Comfort is obviously very, he's very strong on that, about facing people with the fact that that they're liars or adulterers, even though I think he goes about it in the way that, because Jesus said that even if you look at the woman with lust, that means you are an adulterer if you've ever looked lustfully at someone. And so he wants people to kind of see that and acknowledge that and admit that they're adulterers and liars and all of that stuff. And he's very upfront and very straightforward. So he really emphasizes making people come face to face with their sin, with again the way that the Bible describes human beings. Whether this needs emphasizing like right off the bat in a first conversation or encounter with a person, I'm not sure. And again, it seems to be part of Ray Comfort's approach to make this a priority. It's probably not how I would go about it in every case. Maybe in some cases, whereas he seems to do this like as a principle or as his general approach. And so in this sense, I learned from him that you cannot get the message across without getting across that people need saving from their sins and that they need transformation from their sinful nature into a nature that conforms to Christ. But I wouldn't. And again, I wouldn't go about it as that's my approach, the way Ray Comfort does. If I understand it correctly, that he does it this way, But I definitely take him as an inspiration in terms of, courage, straightforwardness, clarity, not shying away from the uncomfortable parts of the message of the gospel. And so I think, I'm encouraged by him. I'm inspired by him. Okay. What else? So shall I take one more question? Virtually, icon, Revelation. Do you like books like Lord of the Rings or the Chronicles of Narnia that have biblical allegory? Well, I like Revelation studies. I have to. So this is a good question. Do I like books like Lord of the Rings or the Chronicles of Narnia that have biblical allegory? Yeah, I've not read Lord of the Rings, I have to admit. I have not read. I've read parts of Narnia. I haven't read all of it. I do like them, but I'm very like my reading basically consists of theology and philosophy and apologetics. I don't read. I don't know when the last time was that I read fiction. I'm sorry. So I'm quite a one-dimensional type of guy when it comes to my reading. I mean, I'm fascinated by people who are passionate about, doing like apologetics or doing theology and communicating the gospel through, again, allegory and through, literature. I mean, there's a very good. I've been fascinated by this person. I think she's called Holy. Put it in the chat. Holy Ordway. You should, all of you guys who are into, allegory and literature as a way to build bridges to the gospel. You should check her out. I think Holy Ordway. I've read 2 of her books. One is Not God's Type, and another book I can't remember. She's a professor of English literature. I think she was educated at Cambridge, maybe Oxford, somewhere in the UK. She's from the UK. Yeah, she's a professor of English literature, and her story is fascinating. So she describes herself as having been a hardcore atheist, very opposed, like very aggressive actually. And she said, she would have always she would always challenge the Christians in her classes and be like have a go at them. And then, but she said, she always felt that when she read Lord of the Rings and Narnia, she felt, I think she said specifically the way that C.S. Lewis's imagination, there was something that really attracted her, and she felt, well, the way what he describes and the world he builds in his literature or in his writings, there was something that just lured her and compelled her, and it was through that set her on a journey that ultimately led her to accepting Christ. And she is passionate. I think she teaches at Houston Baptist University. They've set up a program of cultural apologetics with Nancy Pearcey, the author who wrote Love Thy Body and Absolute, or not Absolute Truth, God's Truth or something, very good books. She teaches there in a program for cultural apologetics. So what I want to say basically is I'm fascinated, and I love to be surrounded by people who have that feel and appreciation and sense for, again, how literature can point to Christ. I love that. Again, I love people who talk about this stuff, because I'm not too, I just don't have the radar for these things. So people who do, they inspire me lots. So yes, I know that Holy Ordway is Catholic. I know that. But again, I love her work. What I've seen from her is very inspiring. So, I think, well, let's wrap it up. Let me take one more question, and then we'll call it a day. Yes. Let me just pick up one more question. Since truth can be found in other religions, Wellmaker, I think I've picked up a lot of questions for you today, right? Let me take someone else. Okay. Yeah. So well, let me pick up on what, just to follow up from the omniscience and free will question. Since Ivan Vnuchko, is this right? But you could be wrong. God cannot. Yeah, that's a good follow-up question. Thanks, Ivan, for posting that. I hope you're still around. Thanks for I remember you from your comments. Yeah, very thoughtful. I like the stuff you put out there. Yes, it's right that God cannot be wrong. God's science or omniscience, God's knowledge cannot be wrong. I could be wrong about the 4th of July, okay? But still, the fact that God cannot be wrong does not cause, or that the fact that God's knowledge is perfect or infallible, the infallibility of God's knowledge does not, again, qualifying God's knowledge as infallible, even this does not, endow that knowledge with causal powers, okay? Now, and so in a way, if you want to put this, I mean, the distinction here is that, and William Lane Craig and Paul Copen, they both point this out. The fact that God knows the future necessarily means that you will do X, okay, whatever you're going to do. That the fact of God's omniscience necessarily means that you will do X. However, it does not mean that you will necessarily do X. So that's the distinction. It necessarily means that you will do X, but it doesn't mean that you will necessarily do X. So it doesn't force you. Again, God's knowledge doesn't force you to do X, but God's knowledge, it means, as a whole state of affairs, as it relates to, again, the way the world is ordered, it means that you have freely decided what you're going to do, that God knows what you have freely decided what you're going to do. It does not mean that you have to do what you're going to do. It simply means that God has knowledge about what you're going to do. So that's, again, that's the distinction there. It's God's knowledge means, like, again, it means that He is perfectly aware of what is going to happen, but it does not mean that in itself forces you to do what you're going to do. So yeah, I hope this makes sense. Good. Let's call it a day or a night for some of you guys. Thanks a lot for hopping on. And as I said in one of the posts recently, I will try to do one of these live streams once a month, probably always on a Friday, like the first Friday in the month. I'll announce it next time again. Thanks everyone for hanging out on the channel, for commenting, for engaging. Thanks for everyone who shares this stuff. And yeah, I hope you all have either a good night, a good night's sleep, or a good day. And I'm looking forward to seeing you all next time. Love you all. Bye bye, guys.